Partly cloudy today, 16. Tomorrow, partly cloudy, 16. The same for Saturday and Sunday, 16. Then sunny on Monday and Tuesday, temps in the mid-teens. More news as it happens on 5AA.
1395, Adelaide's 5AA. This is Peter Godfrey.
10 degrees at the moment. It is 8 minutes past 5. Quick text here from Maggie with a bit of a question I can answer for you, Maggie. Wondering if you can help, please. Is a call from a mobile phone to a 1-800 number free, or is that only from a landline? Correct. For a 1-800 number, if you call it from a landline, it's free. If you call it from your mobile, you do get charged. The rates can vary from carrier to carrier, and it is a timed charge too. So there you go, Maggie. All right, let's head across the ditch, find out what's happening in New Zealand. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz. How are you, Selwyn?
You're very good, Peter.
Good week there. Good work. We haven't spoken to you for
Not too bad. It's certainly been cold in certain parts of the country. We can really get into those temperatures, if you like, later on.
Yes. You saw some pretty wild ones there. But politics...
Records broken in the South Island.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, wow. All right. Politics first, though. Now, we had, was it a week ago, just over a week here, the Australian government and China have signed a free trade agreement. On the back of that, New Zealand is looking at your free trade agreement with China. Yours was what, the first free trade with China?
The agreement was struck in 2008 when the Labour-led government was in power here. But New Zealand is looking to apply some leverage off the Australian China free trade agreement, Peter, and it's an attempt to get China to relax some of the export volume caps. And what we're talking about there is trade that goes above a certain level has tariffs applied, and in particular our dairy exports are affected by that. So free trade up to a certain level, and then above that there are tariffs that are applied. Now, of course, the Australian one is actually quite attractive, and by degrees over the period of years you can see those tariffs being reduced on those that cap kind of structure to the point where 96% of tariffs would be gone in the two-way trade between Australia and China. So New Zealand is kind of looking at, in 2008 New Zealand struck this, and it was a good free trade agreement, and it was the first off the rank, if you like, and there was a lot of competition actually at the time between Helen Clark, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and John Howard, of course, in Australia, as to who was going to get the free trade agreement first. And over here we managed to get that first, and that was the New Zealand, he's still in Parliament actually, Trade Minister Phil Goff, and a little bit of trivia on the side, Peter, is earmarked to most likely campaign for the Auckland Mayoralty in a year and a half. That aside, New Zealand's Trade Minister Tim Grosser said this week, and it's a bit of a quote here, ours was the first free trade agreement that China did with any developed country. Things have moved on. Grosser says we're using the Australian Free Trade Agreement, or FTA, as part of the structure of an argument as to why we now need to upgrade China's first free trade agreement, and that is underway. Grosser confirms that. Now, the New Zealand Herald reported this week, Prime Minister John Key basically saying the same thing. He's saying the main aim is to try and remove the thresholds. That's those caps that we talked about at the front end of this bulletin, Peter. John Key says that which China can impose extra tariffs on products such as dairy. So you can see the sensitivities around dairy are very high. And under the terms of the China Free Trade Agreement, China can apply those extra tariffs, as we were talking about, to an previously agreed to level. Now, the cap was agreed in 2008, and since then there has been increases in the trade to China, Peter, quite significant increases. And back in November, I'm just bringing up the statement between the People's Republic of China and New Zealand, a joint statement of the time in November last year, and it was saying that the two-way trade between Australia and New Zealand, China and New Zealand had increased beyond expectations, and that $20 billion of two-way trade was achieved by expected to achieve by 2015. That's this year, and it certainly has done that. The two sides, it says, promised to continue to implement the FTA under its current structure at that stage, but expected that the two-way trade was going to exceed $30 billion by 2020. So you can see that for New Zealand in particular to strike a benefit from that two-way trade, it is positioning to try and get those tariffs at the top end of the cap taken down, or certainly reduced down to equitable standards compared to the Australian free trade agreement with China.
So would this be seen? Could it be seen from this side of the ditch as us having a bit too much competition with each other? That it's another challenge to anything that's in the Australian China deal?
Yeah, I think certainly when I was over in Australia last time, I did note that some of the information coming out of your Treasurer's office, Joe Hockey's office, was certainly starting to actually talk about areas where New Zealand has long expected to have had a dominant position, and that within the dairy and the milk powder exports. And I could hear Joe Hockey talking about the advantages for Australia in that area should the free trade agreement be struck, and it rang bells with me at that stage. And I thought, back in New Zealand, our diplomats will be working hard to try and make sure the playing field is level, as they say, and working the China diplomatic route to get that addressed. But what we can see too, Peter, is that that New Zealand dairy export conglomerate Fonterra, and if people look at, I know Australian consumer outlets have got very much an Australian first type thing, and good on you guys for doing that. But if you look at a New Zealand dairy product there, chances are you'll see a little emblem somewhere or some writing there somewhere that says Fonterra. Now, Fonterra is huge globally. It's I think it is the biggest kind of country exporting body here in New Zealand, based and originated from New Zealand, but it has significant investments in the Australian dairy sector. And so Fonterra itself has been kind of putting around the traps, and some of the National Party MPs have been talking about this. They say that Fonterra won't be affected so much by the added competitive advantage of the Australian-China free trade agreement and in favour of Australia here, because of that investment that Fonterra has meaning Australia's dairy sector. But at the same time, New Zealand farmers are certainly being screwed right down at the moment, Peter. The cost of producing milk is higher at the moment than what they are getting once it leaves the gate.
Right.
The commodity prices for milk powder in particular have collapsed compared to a year ago, despite the politicians and the Prime Minister himself and the Finance Minister saying, it's just a small blip. It's still going to be white gold for you people, and you've got something marvellous coming your way. Well, it's been the opposite of what they were promised, and this shows that politicians can't control commodity markets, doesn't it? You guys certainly know about that. And the thing here is that the farmers are really, really, really having to rely on the banks to extend credit on the basis of, hoping that commodity prices will improve as the seasons tick on later in the year. The big problem here, of course, is if they don't, and also already that New Zealand farmers are able to export high-quality volume, almost to the maximum that they can get per cow or per hectare of land. There's not a lot more that they can do to make it more efficient for themselves. This kind of area where, Fonterra might say, we're okay, we could, because we've long-term invested into the Australian dairy sector. Well, that means nothing to the farmer here in New Zealand. Remember, New Zealand has a big slice of our land is still dependent on dairy products.
Indeed. Okay, so have any discussions begun between New Zealand and China in regard to this, or is this just the very sort of beginning of it, that the hope is that some leverage could be made?
No, apparently as soon as New Zealand got wind that Australia and China were close to striking that deal specifically in the CAP area. This was around November last year, so November 2014. The New Zealand diplomats kicked into gear and started to try and negotiate at least trying to create an environment with the Chinese diplomats where New Zealand could position an argument and get some sort of headway here. Now, if you look back and stand back from this type of news event, because it's being stimulated by our trade minister, there's two things that you can kind of read from that. One, that New Zealand and China are probably a long way down the track toward making an official announcement on this.
Okay.
That New Zealand would not want to rock China's boat. So for our trade ministers who be commenting on this, from our Prime Minister trying to comment on this, would suggest that there has been an agreement that is in favour of both countries.
Okay.
New Zealand's highest politicians would not, considering the sensitivities around this issue, want to try and use a public route to leverage the Chinese diplomats. That this wouldn't work.
Wouldn't work, yeah.
So one can expect that New Zealand is coming into alignment with Australia on this. If I'm wrong on that, Peter, what do they say? I won't eat my hat, but I'll certainly confess the folly of that rationale to you on air. But I'd say that that's pretty much the case.
Okay, all right. You'll keep us informed on that. So we'll just have a quick break and we'll be back with more from your part of the world. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz, is with us. It's 19 minutes past 5.
5AA has been searching for the very best South Australian businesses, and we've found them. Here's just one iconic business that represents the best of SA. Adelaide Central Market has been an icon for 146 years. From humble beginnings to the bustling tourist attraction it is today, it really is the heart and soul of Adelaide. With over 80 stalls, the Adelaide Central Market is the food mecca for multicultural cuisine and fresh produce. The best of SA, thanks to Adelaide Central Market and 1395 Adelaide's 5AA.
Hi, it's Wayne Phillips. The stylish Kia Cerato is my special of the month from only $19,990 drive away. With free auto and a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, you save over $4,000. Be quick, Wayne Phillips Kia, Main South Road, Ranella.
In Australia today, 1 in 10 children live in disadvantaged families. Financial hardship means they lack the education support they need to keep up at school. They feel isolated and alone. No child should ever feel like this. Please donate to the Smith Family's Winter Appeal and fund vital out-of-school learning programs to help them catch up and fit in. Call 1800 024 069 or visit thesmithfamily.com.au.
Do you suffer with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? CMAX are looking for volunteers aged 40 to 75 years diagnosed with COPD to participate in a clinical drug study. The study involves the administration and assessment of an investigational medication over a 3-week period. It will be conducted at CMAX, an independent clinical study unit located within the Royal Adelaide Hospital campus. Participants will be paid for their time and participation. To register, call CMAX on 1800 150 433. That's 1800 150 433.
Attention winemakers! The WineTech Trade Show is back in Adelaide with over 150 suppliers with expert advice, latest innovations and new products. WineTech Adelaide Showground July 14 to 16. Trade only. Register now at winetechaustralia.com.au.
Ladies, are you over 50? Got a spare 10 minutes? That's how long it takes to get a breast screen. To detect breast changes you might not be able to feel yourself. To reduce your risk of dying from breast cancer by up to 40%. So, can you take 10 minutes out of your day for a free breast screen? Of course you can. See what you can't feel. Get a breast screen today. Call Breast Screen SA on 13 20 50. A message from the Government of South Australia.
Did you bring 2 bags or 3?
Does it really matter?
As long as there's room for a few souvenirs.
There's plenty of room.
Okay, we're here.
Let the holiday begin.
On Spirit of Tasmania, a trip to Tassie has never been easier. Pack the car with everything you need and drive straight into your next holiday. To book a trip to remember, visit spiritoftasmania.com.au.
Peter Godfrey on 1395 Adelaide's 5AA.
And with us, Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz, looking at some of the things happening across the ditch in New Zealand. Now, Selwyn, you mentioned some record-breaking cold temperatures on the South Island. So, how cold?
Oh, very cold. The conditions that led to this, Peter, is New Zealand's been recovering from severe floods last week.
Yeah.
It wasn't on your show last week. It really hit the Whanganui area, particularly over the weekend too. It really has been a bad flood there. That's in the west side of the North Island and the central area. But certainly in previous weeks, Dunedin and even Hokitika in the South Island have really suffered from that. Now, with the settled weather have come these clear skies and below zero temperatures. Now, I know you guys have been having it pretty chilly, but, oh man, you check out this kind of thing here. Now, even in the North Island, which is obviously usually warmer than the South Island, that makes sense, right, doesn't it? You know, the coldest spot was in Timaru at -4.9, so almost -5 degrees, and that was on Tuesday at 7 a.m. Now, the South Island, now this is something quite different. South Island, the coldest spot was the Tara Hills near Omarama. I'm mixing up my words, but Omarama. Omarama.
If you're having trouble with it, I'm sure I'm not going to try and pronounce it.
Because there's a place up here that's close to Auckland called Otara is a suburb, and then there's Orewa, and there's Omaha, and I'm getting my Māori pronunciation mucked up, which is a shocker, isn't it? But anyway, down in the South Island, tucked in there in the Canterbury kind of area, in the general Christchurch kind of area, it plummeted down to -21 degrees Celsius.
-21?
-21. I mean, this is a record for New Zealand since, records obviously began, and that was at 8:30 in the morning on Tuesday. -21 degrees Celsius. I mean, this is unbelievable.
I guess once you get, sort of getting down that, a couple of degrees further down in the minus scale, you're not really going to notice, are you?
No. I mean, there was a talk last night where the Met Service and Weather Watch kind of made mention, Weather Watch in particular, on Twitter, and Weather Watch was saying, it's actually getting warmer. It was -16, it's -13 now.
Break out the summer clothes.
I mean, -21.
Amazing.
I know this friend of mine up in the Massachusetts area of the United States, he said, you guys wouldn't survive around here in winter. You need antifreeze in your blood. Well, these guys in the South Island are starting to actually, when we say it's cold up here in Auckland, they just kind of look at us like we're pathetic and chuckle away. The real Southland, that's the test of a real man kind of thing they kind of go on about. But in Auckland, so around Whenuapai, that's one of the North Auckland suburbs, -2.1 degrees. It was that I can confirm it was blooming cold yesterday morning. Hamilton, we're just south of Auckland, -1.1 degrees Celsius. Tauranga, not too bad. It came in at 3 degrees, or just over 3 degrees. And Wellington, the windy city, the one that's renowned for its awful plane landings. You go in there and it's like taking a roller coaster ride on the world's worst. And that place, Wellington, the capital city, it was not too bad, 5.7 degrees. Christchurch, -3.6. And Dunedin, just under the minus, it was 0.7 degrees Celsius. But that -21 degrees, that's what's got everybody talking up here. And you can still feel it in the air. Even this morning, Peter, I don't normally sit here and talk to you with the heater going. And the South Island counterparts, if they hear me saying this, they'll be saying he is pathetic. He's absolutely hopeless. But I'm sitting here with the heater next to me because I can feel this chill of the South Pole, the Antarctica, coming through the walls of the house.
Oh well, we complain about it being cold, but I'm feeling a bit that way because I've been just looking through our observations at the moment to see if I can find anything. Here in the city, 10.5 degrees at the moment. Pretty warm compared to you guys. So up in the Adelaide Hills, 5 degrees. And that's about the coldest. Not that surely there's somebody somewhere in the mid-north that's a lot colder. Best I can find, Lee Creek at the moment, 6.3 degrees.
Well, that's pretty cold, isn't it?
Yeah,
but I mean, if we're trying to get the coldest kind of temperatures going here, you guys are in there, and you certainly aren't lagging behind. South Australia amazes me. I talk to you each week usually, don't I? And through the seasons, I can pick up the changes, and honestly, I don't know how you guys survive those summer temperatures over the 40 degrees. I always say to you, it's the same old thing. It's like a cliche now. I say it's warmer than blood, Peter. How can you survive that?
Well, some of us though, we manage somehow. But then, it is a little bit milder. This week has been overnight temperatures. I mean, we can get the ones. Last week we had some that are getting down sort of 1 or 2 degrees, or in places like the Barossa Valley, they'll be 0, -1, -2. So we can get them pretty cold, and then those other extremes.
Good for the wine, for the
cool climate.
Cold winter, isn't it?
Yeah,
and as I always say to you, Peter, these temperatures are fantastic for snowing. So if any of you people get the urge to go for a bit of a good ski on some good cold snow, that's going to be nice and crisp. For the South Island of New Zealand, definitely the ski fields down there are definitely the place to go. Certainly the North Island ones are easy access from Auckland as well. 3.5 hours drive, basically easy drive down, and you're on the ski fields.
Very tempting, very tempting. Until next week, Selwyn, have a great week. Thanks for joining us this morning. Stay warm. Keep that heater going.
Stay warm.
See you, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz.
5AA has been searching for the very best South Australian businesses, and we've found them. Here's just one iconic business that represents the best of SA. Haig's Chocolates is Australia's oldest chocolate maker, now celebrating 100 years. 4 generations of the Haig family have been making delicious premium quality chocolate since 1915 at their Adelaide factory, and sold in retail stores across Adelaide and also in Melbourne and Sydney. The best of SA, thanks to Haig's Chocolates and $13.95. Adelaide's 5AA.
At the Belair Hotel, it pays to be a senior. Seniors pay just $20 for the Belair's weekday lunch deal. Main course, dessert, coffee and stunning views. The Belair Hotel. It's more than just a great meal, it's a great day out.
Dear favourite work coffee cup thief, my Mr. Lover